And with that, we'll get started. So again, warm welcome again, and let's take a look at what we are going to do today. So we have about 1.5 hour to 2 hours of content planned for you, and that can be a lot of time. So we will also do a break in between. So essentially in the first 10-15 minutes, we will be talking about what we're going to do today in these 2 hours, what you are going to get as part of this webinar series, and what we do at Spectra Systems, and what we do at CloudLabs. So that's what we'll do for about 10-15 minutes. Then it is about the certification itself, and we have some technical content planned that we will be going over. And in the end, we'll keep 20 minutes for any next steps and questions if there's any. My name is Amit Malik, and I work for Spectra Systems, and I'm an Azure architect and Microsoft certified trainer. Been working with Microsoft technologies for over 10 years, and I have over 40 Azure certification, 45. I haven't looked at it in quite some time, but for around 40 exams or so I've cleared in last few years, and I've written 4 books around Microsoft Azure technologies. So I've been training people for quite a few years now, and that's how we started CloudLabs as well. And you can be assured that I'll give you everything that I know on how you can pass exams quickly. So from an overview standpoint, first thing first, what are you going to get in this webinar? Okay, so obviously, you are already in the webinar, so the session is available for you. But along with session, you will be getting 2 additional things from our side, absolutely free of cost. The first is manage lab access for 5 days. So that includes hands-on lab environment for the AZ-104 as per Microsoft official curriculum, which you can use over the next 5 days. And these includes pre-provisioned Azure environments. So you do not have to sign up for any Azure trial, or you do not have to claim any Azure pass. You will get a ready-to-use environment, which is available for you without any additional without any additional sign up or trial or anything, and most importantly without having to put any of the credit cards. For example, typically in order to get an Azure trial, you have to sign up with a credit card, and while that is absolutely safe and you should do that if you want to do additional self learning, for today's session and the labs that we are going to provide, you do not need to provide any payment information anywhere whatsoever, and you will be able to use the environment for next 5 days with pre-provisioned Azure accounts. So we will give you the Azure accounts essentially. The next thing is practice test. So practice test is basically your your labs, and along with labs, once you're done with labs, you can actually do hands-on practice test that will basically help you with the trying out the exam experience. There will be a bunch of questions that you can try out, and that will help you basically checking your readiness before you want to go for exam. And as we understand that it might take time to do so, it will be good if you can do that for if you can get that for some additional time. So practice test will be available for 30 days. So that's basically is what you're going to get, and with that, we are moving forward. So agenda for the webinar itself, we'll talk about AZ-104, what is it? We'll do some exam syllabus. We'll go through the exam syllabus. How does the exam is structured, and we'll take a look at Azure Compute. So we will do some demo, and with those demos, you will be able to even actually see that what's going on. And so I don't have any slide deck or anything long slide deck to read through. So we'll be actually creating things in this session and together, and we'll take a look at various options that are available in Azure. And once you're done with that, we'll enable access for you to try out the labs and so on. So over here, the first thing is who we are, why we are doing this. So I'm part of Spectra Systems. We are a cloud solutions company. So we have various products. CloudLabs is one of our product that is sponsoring this particular free webinar for everyone. Along with CloudLabs, we have many other products, including CSP Control Center, Sassify, Cloud Events. So all these products basically are designed and built for cloud providers, ISVs, and partners. So essentially, all the products operates on the top of cloud platforms and provide additional value-add services. So that's what like we do. As CloudLabs platform itself, it's a hands-on lab platform through which we provision lab environments and all these practice tests and everything that you're going to experience. After this webinar, those are enabled through our SaaS platform called CloudLabs. So that's that, and it's used by like Microsoft themselves for a lot of things, and along with Microsoft. We work with Sophos, Red Hat, and then various other organizations. I see there is a question, how big is your company? So I'll answer that, but just to call out, this is not a marketing webinar or so on. This is just like a quick overview about what we do and where I'm from. But we are basically today like we support clients from all across, from New Zealand to all the way to Pacific time zone. And with that, that's all. Like that was my last mention about what we are and what we do. And from here on, it is all about AZ-104. There's a question that, are you Microsoft certified MCT? Yes, I am a Microsoft certified MCT for 6+ years. I have over 40 Microsoft exams I've cleared, and I've written 4 different books on Azure platform, and I've been doing these kind of training sessions for quite some time, and that is when we realized the gap with respect to learning. Like it is pretty difficult to get lab environment, and I used to waste a lot of time when I used to do trainings by getting every participant like a trial account set up, etc. And to solve that problem, we created CloudLabs. So moving forward, now let's talk about what exactly is AZ-104. So before we get into that, I want to do like a quick survey, high level survey. I would like to understand the audience a little bit so that I can tune in the content as needed throughout the session. So if you are hearing me, if you can use like chat, if you can use the chat box and tell me like what has been your experience, and you can just define it in like completely new to Azure, beginner, intermediate, or you're an advanced user and you have done certification before. You just one word like beginner, completely new, done some certifications, and that's it. So if you can like put that in the chat box, that would help. Okay. Nice. So I'm seeing a lot of responses. Thank you for responding. I see many of you have completed Azure AZ-900, which is great. And I see like many of you have, are working as well. And I see many of you are completely new to Azure too. So no problem at all. Like this is like a beginner session, and as I understand, there are various beginner in the team. So we will go through everyone. I see someone has done like bunch of certification, which is definitely great. So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing this, and pretty helpful. So now let's talk about what this exam and who is it for. So the language that you see on the slide, this is basically from Microsoft, and it tells exactly who this exam is for. So to start with, if you are going to like if you read it, so it says candidates for this exam should have subject matter expertise. So that's the key thing here. So this is not a fundamental exam. This is an expert level exam where it is expected that you should have some level of SME skills around implementing. So it starts with implementing. It doesn't start with designing. So you can expect that there will not be any designer questions here. There will not be any solutioning question. It will be all about implementation. And implementation is all about how do you do things. So in a typical environment, there are like design documents prepared by architects, and where all the specifications are given. Like for example, a design document would typically include in an infrastructure project that we need to create these many networks, these many servers, we need to install things in that. The design document includes the specifications, and then an infrastructure engineer basically use those specifications and provision things in the environments. So this particular exam is for those who actually does the hands-on work. So it is about implementation, where the questions can be expected to be around how do you do certain things. Managing. So managing is basically once the environments are provisioned, what do you do next? How do you monitor and manage them? So in terms of management, there are a few things. Like I'm only going to talk about more from an infrastructure point of view here, not necessarily from a PaaS standpoint. So in the managing things, you will actually do backups, you will actually do recovery, you will actually do networking setup, you will provision new users. So the day-to-day activities that we talk about, so those are the management activities. And the third thing is monitoring, where there is a production environment running, and in the production environment we absolutely need to make sure that it is healthy and up and running all the time. So in order to do that, there are certain alerts, dashboards, and metrics that you look at every day, like CPU utilization or network utilization and things like that. So in order to enable those things, you have to set up various monitoring capabilities, and that is measured in this exam because this is an administrator exam. So three things here: implementation, which is how do you create things, how do you deploy and configure things in Azure; manage, how do you do day-to-day operations, day-to-day activities; and monitor, how do you what are the things that you monitor, and how do you understand and configure the alerts to get notified if something is not going as expected in your production environment. So that's what this exam is all about. The next thing is Azure is pretty vast, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, all of those things are available right here in this exam. So uh, with Azure Administrator, it is more aligned towards infrastructure. I'm seeing that there is some voice keeps breaking. I'll just take a moment here. Is this for everyone or okay? Okay, just a second. I'm sorry about that. Let me quickly try to switch. Okay, I just switched my network. So I hope this goes better now. Please do highlight if it. Please do highlight again if the audio goes bad again. I just switched my network. I'm sorry about this. So let me know if it goes bad again, and we'll check. So moving forward, like I was saying, Azure is pretty vast. IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and so on. There are like tons of services around AI, machine learning. There are various certifications around Azure platform. This particular exam is more aligned toward infrastructure. So this is about infrastructure operations and not necessarily on the not on the data side or AI side or DevOps side. There are like separate exams for that. So now, typically, an Azure administrator is often part of a larger team who are dedicated to implement and manage environment for an organization. So typically, like this particular role, if you are targeting this role to get like a job, this particular exam will help you to get like a job where you are part of an Azure team and you are implementing and managing and monitoring cloud environments for your customers. So now let's move forward. Let me clean up this thing. So now, who is it for? Like, why you should do this exam? So the first thing is, if you are looking to start your career in Azure and you are done with AZ-900, this is the easiest exam you can target. All other exams like Azure developer exam or architect exams, they are another next level. So if you are starting your career in Azure after AZ-900, this is a great exam to start on. It is all about like infrastructure services, which is obviously, while it is not so fancy, at the same time, it is the most popular used service of all the cloud platforms. So, infrastructure is still there. Obviously, there is a lot of revolution happening in infrastructure with respect to, containers or PaaS services or, serverless. A lot of new things are coming in, but still, VM servers are here to stay for at least, another 5 year or 10 years or so. So there is still, good amount of organizations are running infrastructure. So if you are targeting like a job in that area and you're pretty new to Azure, that would definitely help because there are so many companies still using VMs. If you have been working on, managing Windows servers, VMware, or Hyper-V clusters in past, this is definitely a great exam to start with because you will realize that in like cloud is not that different. If you have been managing like on-prem servers, it is pretty easy to get into understanding cloud, and the reason is it is the same things. There is no difference. You still run the same Windows servers or Linux machines in Azure. You still configure the IP addresses. You still configure DNSs. You still manage the ports. You still do all those, storage configuration and disk provisioning. So the things that you do on the on-premises are still very much relevant when you work in cloud environments. The only thing is, it is way more simplified for you. You don't have to worry about hardware anymore. You don't have to worry about virtualization anymore. So it is way more simplified, and a lot of things that you do in an on-prem world is now taken care by Microsoft, but the fundas remains same. The basically the fundamentals are exactly same in a cloud environment or in a on-prem environment. If you want to set up a highly available application, you still have to worry about your database replication. You still have to worry about you keeping your application consistent. The only thing is, Azure gives you tools and technologies to make it easy for you to configure and manage that. But those things are still needed. Cloud is not a magic wand. It is still the same technologies, just that it is made as a way more easier for you to create and manage. So that's like another key reason that people do AZ-104 is so that you can learn about cloud technologies and transition your career from on-premises to cloud. Expanding to multiple cloud, like if you're coming from AWS or GCP, this is a great exam to get started. If you're targeting like architect level exam, I would really recommend that you go through this exam first, because even in the architect level exam, there will be a lot of infrastructure things that you will find. So this would be like a pretty good, starting step to get to the Azure architect level exam. Now, the next thing is, this exam is more of IT pro audience. So Microsoft defines like, IT professionals, IT developers, data scientists, DevOps engineers, like different categories. This is more of a IT pro audience, not a developer audience. So if you're a hardcore developer, this exam, may not be directly related to what you do every day. But at the same time, for if you're working for like small organizations or startup, you may be expected to do a bit of cloud administration too. So it could help you to do some of those things and be more familiar with Azure in general. But it doesn't really have things which are there in your day-to-day life when you're writing code, etc. That is more of AZ-204, the Azure Developer Exams, if you are more interested towards the developer things. Similarly, I see someone mentioned about like DP203. So if you are a data engineer, DP203 may be a better exam to start with, because Azure has done like really amazing things when it comes to data, like Azure Synapse Analytics, Databricks, SQL databases. So they have really, transformed the infrastructure, and in the modern cloud data warehousing, market, in like IaaS is not really the the preferred thing that I'm seeing with my customers anymore. So for data exam, if you're a data engineer, DP203 may be a better certifications to do. But AZ-104, it's like I said, it is stepping stone for general Azure administration. So it would be super useful for any pretty much everyone. So moving forward, now what does the syllabus include? So there are 5 different sections. This whole exam is divided into. The first section is about Azure identities and governance. So identities is Azure Active Directory. So Azure Active Directory is the identity provider for the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem. So if you are using Microsoft 365, previously Office 365, previously it was popular as Office 365. So if you are using Office 365 or Power BI online service like SharePoint and or Teams or any of those services like Intune, Dynamics 365, Power Platform, like any of the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem product, Azure AD is the backbone. So Azure AD is the identity service. It is responsible for the authentication. And this is also called like a cloud-based identity solution. If you are coming from an on-premises world, you may have seen like Active Directory, which is the central authority of pretty much everything and takes care of the authentication in all kind of applications and devices inside in company's network. Azure AD does that in cloud. So while AD is basically accessible within your network or on VPN, Azure AD is accessible everywhere. And so Azure AD and Azure AD is not a replacement of Active Directory per se, but sort of modernization and as the applications grew, more and more SaaS applications are there comparative to old times when you would set up an application server and install applications inside your network. Comparating Comparatively to that, Azure AD integrates with web applications using the web protocols like OAuth or SAML and so on. Whereas Active Directory traditionally have been operating on LDAP, Kerberos, some of those technologies. So there is a lot of difference. So it is not a complete replacement as of today. However, it is designed that in future, Azure AD could be the only identity that you might use. And many of the organization who are starting now, they directly start with Azure AD unless they really, really need to do some legacy application setup, etc. One of the major difference between on-premises Active Directory and Azure Active Directory so far had been that Azure Active Directory did not support Kerberos. Even that is now changed. Azure AD now support Kerberos, and it's in private preview, or I think it came to public preview recently. So it is in preview. It's a preview service, but it's still there. And so Azure AD is like trying to bridge that gap as much as possible when it comes to comparative to the on-premises directory. So the expectation in this exam here is that you should be able to manage the identities. Like in any identity provider, there are users, groups, and so on, policies. So it is expected that you should be able to manage Azure AD users, groups, etc. The second portion of here is governance. Governance is all about ensuring that the processes and the technologies and everything used in your organizations are consistent across all the teams. Typically in larger companies, every team would have their own preference and they would do things on their own way. And at the end, there might be like a lot of IT sprawling issues. So governance helps with that. So Azure provides tons of governance capabilities, which includes like policies like ensuring everyone is using consistent size of virtual machines, ensuring everyone is following the same sort of naming convention and tagging capabilities. Like all of that is basically governance, and then even tracking compliance against that. So that is the first section. Second section is about storage. So this is all about Azure storage technologies that is available. So Azure storage technologies typically includes like blob storage, file storage, disk storage, and so on. So how do you use that? Third is about compute resources. This is where the virtual machines, comes into picture, where you set up the servers, Windows, Linux machines in Azure, highly availability, load balancing, some of those, technologies that comes into picture. Then configuring and managing networking. So, traditionally in an on-premises world, there has been like separate teams. There has been a network team, which is completely different than VMware team or Windows team or Hyper-V team, and there is separate like a end user team. So there is a separate storage team who is managing the centralized SAN storage. Whereas in Azure or in any cloud environment for that matter, like as it is growing, there may actually not be like a need of having all these separate team, and you could be like a cloud engineer who is managing all of these. That is why over here you see networking, you see compute, you see monitoring and backing up. All of those things are available here. Now over here, as you see, there is a share allocated to each of these section, like 15, 20%, 20, 25%, and so on. What does that mean? That means that much, like the exam is of 1,000 marks. So out of the 1,000 marks, 150 to 200 marks will be coming from Azure identities and governance. 200 to 250 marks will be from deploying and managing compute resources. 25 to 250 to 300 marks will be coming from networking section. It doesn't necessarily means the distribution of the question, because one question may be of multiple marks, so it is sort of distribution of marks. So if you see here, the most important module definitely seems to be the networking, and like it is really like networking is really the key thing when it comes to cloud infrastructure. Like everything else is way more simpler, and networking is where people typically struggle a little bit initially unless they are from a networking background. But I like rest assured, it is fairly easy to understand and set up like networking in Azure or any other cloud environment, and you don't have to do CCNA course to learn cloud networking. You don't have to do Network Plus or those advanced routing and switching courses to set up networks in cloud. Those things are no longer needed to be working in cloud networking. Obviously they have their own they have their own value and everything, but just to get started, you don't need to learn any of the routing, switching concepts, etc. If you want to be like a full-fledged enterprise networking engineer, yes, you will need to do that, but just to be like a cloud engineer, it is not needed to go that deep. So this is how the distribution is, and there is even more detailed distribution available, which I'll quickly show. So let me bring up this here. So this is I'm on the exam AZ-104 page here, and over here I'll put these links in the chat as well so that you can follow. So this is the official page of AZ-104 exam from Microsoft. And if you go scroll down, you'll find this download the exam skill guidelines. So this PDF document includes everything that you may need to cover in this exam. So for example, Active Directory talks about creating users and group, creating administrative units, device settings. So this is the detailed syllabus, and the exam questions will be coming from these topics only. I have seen some weird type of question outside this, but that is very rare. But otherwise, if you go through all of these, and if you're comfortable in all of these topics, you can be assured that you can clear the exam. So now let's move on. But this is essentially is the most important part of the session, that's the syllabus that will come. So you must go through that syllabus. So as per Microsoft, like this is the typical, like before you appear for an exam. So there was a question that how long does it take to learn for AZ-104? That is a very subjective question. So it depends on if you're coming from like an AWS background, for example, you can be comfortable with Azure administration in less than 2 weeks and go for the exam and clear the exam. If you're coming from like an on-prem environment, it may take like a month. If you're completely new, it may take 3 months. So it's a pretty subjective question based on what's your current skills and current background. But this would really give you like a sense that the question's difficulty. Okay, so what happens is Microsoft authors these exams. Before authoring the exam, they define what kind of experience the person would be having who would be writing this exam, and based on that, the difficulty level is determined. So as you can read here, Microsoft is expecting that someone who is writing this exam should have at least 6 months. The key thing here is it's not, you know, it's not like a general thing that you should have 6 months of experience. It is at least 6 months, so it may be even more. Okay, so that's the Microsoft's expectation from a difficulty level. So 6 months of hands-on experience in administering Azure, along with strong understanding of core Azure services. So strong understanding of core Azure services. This is where your AZ-900 exams comes into picture. So even while you go write this AZ-104, you should definitely go through AZ-900, because that is this understanding exam about Azure workloads, like what kind of things you can run in Azure, virtual machines, networking and so on, security and governance. So Microsoft expects you to have 6 months of experience in doing these things. And there are various ways of doing these things in cloud. The easiest way is using the portal, because there's a graphical user interface available, and that graphical user interface, there are tool tips, there are things that will guide you to do things. So that is definitely the easiest way, but they are expecting that you should be doing this using Azure CLI, PowerShell, as well as resource manager templates as well. So essentially, whatever you create as a learning exercise for this particular exam, don't just use portal. Use CLI, use PowerShell, use templates. Please do those things as well, because there will be questions where you will see command line questions. There will be questions where you will see like a template, and they will expect you to like explain what this template is doing. For no reason whatsoever, you don't have to remember every single command. No. But if you do few exercises, if you deploy some things with command line, you will get an understanding of the pattern of the command line, and you will be able to determine the answers easily. But it is not expected that you should remember every command. No, that is not the goal. So there are like couple of crucial questions which are relevant right now. So I'm taking them up. So the first thing is there any benefit of doing AZ-900? I did that. Will it speed my learning? Absolutely, it will. So with AZ-900, you got an understanding of what all is there in Azure. That is the strong core Azure services, like what all items are there. So it does help. Second, this exam is MCQ or lab. At this point, it is a completely MCQ exam, but Microsoft keeps on changing these things. Like 2 years ago, when they launched AZ-101, there was a lab thing. Recently in Azure 400, AZ-400, like DevOps exam, I saw a lab thing. So right now it is a completely MCQ exam, but I don't know, that might not be true after 3 months. So yeah. And again, the next question is around the same things. Is there any hands-on? And so the hands-on, basically, no, there is no hands-on, there is no writing command line stuff. However, what will be there is like, hey, I want to create a virtual machine using PowerShell, and help me create a command line for that. And there will be like 5 options, and you will drag and drop things in the command that, hey, this would be the right command. So that's it. It will not be about writing the full command line. No, there will already be like a command line syntax written, and you have to do some sort of fix, just like put some things in the between, and so on. Like for example, like the Azure PowerShell command for creating a new virtual machine is new-azvm. After that, it asks for certain things like VM configuration and so on. So they might be giving like new-azvm to you already, and ask you what will be the next thing. And there will be like options from drop down. So that's what I mean. You do not need to remember every single command, but you need an understanding of how this whole command line things are used. So there is a question that I see: exam is 90 minutes. Do we get break? No, there is no break in the exam. It is a completely like if you most of us are doing like it remotely these days, and you are monitored through camera throughout the exam. You cannot go out of the camera view. You cannot like have anything like even I don't think even they allow water. So no, there's no break during exam. It's a constant exam. So moving on. Now preparation resources. We'll spend like a lot of time here. So the best preparation resource that I can tell you is MS Learn. So the next thing is we are going to go to demo. So we'll spend like good 15-20 minutes on this topic, and then we'll go and create some virtual machines in Azure. So let's go to this MS Learn learning path. So this is where I would start if you are, doing like if you're starting to prepare, because they have designed it in exactly against the exam, objectives. So these were the syllabus that you were seeing even in the exam. So the same things are here. So do go through this module, this learning path for sure. If you want to like prepare for AZ-104, the same thing you will also find on the here. So on the certification page. So if you scroll down on certification page, you will find that for each of the section there are like modules, different modules. So this is a key learning resource that you will get as part of the overall AZ-104 items from Microsoft Learn. So the first module here is the prerequisite. It includes the very basic. So essentially it is a revision of AZ-900. So if you have already done AZ-900 and if you're confident about that and about the fundamentals, you may even want to skip it. But if you are starting completely fresh, you should do it. Then it starts with like identity and governance. So if I go over here and so it is all about like configuring the Azure Active Directory, creating the users, and so on. So over here, if you see, the whole thing is designed in such a way, there is like depending on module to module, topic to topic, there is like text that okay, what this whole thing is about. Like for example, over here they are explaining what is Active Directory, like Azure Active Directory. What does it do? For example, it does single sign-on to cloud and on-prem web app. So all of these things are given here as text. And see this note here, pretty important. Like if you are using any of the Microsoft Cloud Service, we talked about it earlier, you are actually using Azure AD in the backend. Azure AD is the backbone of everything. And that also means if Azure AD is down, everything is down. And there had been like few incidents in past. I think there was one around 2 years ago when Azure AD had some service issue for 4 or 5 hours, and pretty much the entire Microsoft Cloud was down at that time. So MS Learn basically has text-based concepts pretty a lot. There are some videos these days, like they have started to add, but most of it is like text-based things. So depending on everyone's interest, some may like reading, some may like videos. So depending on what you like, you may not enjoy it, but still go through this after going through videos. Like for example, you might go through videos, even then go through this because these knowledge checks are very helpful. Like it basically will have, you will have like a basic understanding of whether you are good, done, whether you are done with that particular topic or not. Similarly, like various of the modules may actually even include some labs. Okay, so the benefit is these labs, Microsoft themselves will give you sandbox environment. However, there are very less of them, like very minimal. I think mostly they only have it for command line things like CLI exercises, etc. They are doing labs, and those labs are very limited to what is expected in that module. You cannot go and just deploy anything and everything over there. So there is a question that how can we utilize MS Learn Sandbox subscription, and how does that compare with free trial? The major difference is the MS Learn Sandbox, it is given to you only for a couple of hours for that particular lab, and it is filled with all sort of restrictions. You cannot do anything else apart from the exercise that is given in that particular lab. So that is the main difference. Whereas trial gives you $200 credits, 30 days, you can do whatever you want as long as it is 30 days or $200. And I know a lot of people, when they sign up for cloud trial, They see they need to put the credit card details. I can assure you that whenever you sign up for any Azure trial, yes, you need to put the credit card number, but by default, the subscription comes with a setting where it will automatically be disabled once it goes, once it is like once 30 days is over or the $200 is exhausted. So let's say I sign up for a trial right now with my credit card. I create some things in Azure. I'm not familiar with how the whole pricing is working, and I did not delete it, or I created two expensive things, and within a day the bill is already $200. What will happen? Microsoft will disable your subscription automatically and your credit card will not be charged. Obviously, because it is disabled, you cannot use it anymore. If you need to use it for any purpose, then you need to manually go and remove the spending limit, and then only you can use it. And as you can understand, by removing spending limit, you are telling Microsoft that any bill about $200 charged to my credit card. So unless you manually go and remove that spending limit, your credit card will not be charged no matter what you do. So feel free to go and sign up for trial accounts if you need to, and you don't have to worry about your credit card getting charged unless you remove that limit. So MS Learn is like another resource that is pretty good. Then on YouTube, this particular webinar we are doing as part of like our community, our community exercises. So in YouTube, if you go and search for AZ-104, there will be so many full courses that are available absolutely for free, created by community members, created by MVPs and MCTs, absolutely free. So for example, one of my good friend develops like courses here for different exams, and you can actually, this is again absolutely free of cost. So if you want to, if you need to do this, this is also helpful. Like for example, AZ-104, it's right here. If you are a video person, if you like doing like videos, this is a wonderful thing. Like all the topics are covered over here just for AZ-104. And like I said, there are so many of those available. Like, so if you don't like videos by one MCT or one MVP, stop it there, just search again and you'll find many of them. Just do what you want. No need to go and go through like a bad course on an old course. Keep changing and find what you are enjoying the best if you are into videos. Then another thing that I would like to share is this is a great article from Thomas. So this is like a full-fledged study guide, and this is in response to questions. So someone said, do we need to read official docs? Official docs are absolutely amazing. I personally, how do I do certification prep? Like I write like exams regularly, and most of the times I do not prepare like for them completely. So what I essentially do is I look at the syllabus, I look at what all products are covered, and then I basically go through that product's documentation. That is how I prepare, because I'm already familiar with Azure, so I don't need to go and learn fundamentals. But if you're not familiar, that way wouldn't work. So I would say do like proper training and proper hands-on. But documentation definitely helps, and Thomas has done like a wonderful job here, where he is for every topic. So these were the same topics. For every topic, he has added a link to documentation of Microsoft, like how do you do certain things. Like for example, like PowerShell was one of the things. So he's even added like a PowerShell command. And these goes to like Microsoft documentation, which was very simple to use. So yes, documentation helps. This way, it will make sure that you are covering every single topic, because in videos and other places, you might miss topics, but by going through documentation specifically against the exam syllabus, you will be sure that you are covering through everything. So these are some of the resources that I would like to share from a how to get started learning, like YouTube videos and these a study guide and so forth. There are so many paid trainings out there on Udemy, etc. I am only talking about like free and self-paid resources here. So but if you want, if you have like time and you don't want to like do like spend time in figuring out resources, yes, there are so many great learning providers out there who do like official trainings on these courses. So you can also like consider that option. That is a pretty good option. At the same time, Pluralsight, Udemy, like all these learning platforms also have like a lot of courses that you can purchase. So these are like many of the options that is there. Now that was the learning, but if you remember, this is an implementing exam. This is not a not like a high level knowledge check. So this is a how to exam, like how do you create VM in Azure with PowerShell? That can be a potential question. Whereas in Azure fundamental exam, it would be how do you create servers in Azure? That would be virtual machine. So it is a how to exam. How do you do certain things, not necessarily what is what exam. So in order to succeed in any how to exam, labs are the super important thing. So that means you have to try stuff. You can't just read and go and appear for exam. You can do that, I mean, if you have so much experience and so on. But if you don't have that experience and if you're new to it, please do not skip the labs. And I'm not saying this to promote CloudLabs. Okay, I'm saying this from my learning. You can do labs in your trial subscriptions. You can do labs in basically Microsoft Learn Sandbox. You can do labs in Azure Student Account or Azure Passes, like anywhere. But do labs. That is super critical. And if you are working for a Microsoft partner, this is something Microsoft partners get, but a lot of time this information is not available. If you're working for a Microsoft partner also gets MSDN subscription. Now it is called Visual Studio Enterprise, I think. They also get like certain number of like 150 depending on the partner tier. They also get these MSDN subscriptions where they can give you like an account, Azure account with $150 per month limit. So if you are working for a Microsoft partner, gold partner, do ask your employer that, hey, can I get like a MSDN or an Azure subscription where every month you will get $150. So all those things are there. Now, so over here, definitely CloudLabs, we give labs. We do like a lot of things around, we are the lab company, and like AZ-104 labs, we have available, which you can use, which includes like lab environments for all of these. And you don't have to buy it because this is being available for free for you as if you are attending this webinar. So this is all free. However, if someone wants to buy it, they can buy it from Microsoft's Coursera Marketplace, Azure Marketplace, or by directly contacting us and so on. And we give these accounts pre-provisioned, so everything will be available. Everything will be available to you pre-provision, and you don't have to set up any trial or anything. So there is a question that in order to try, how can we get VMs or set up labs from our end? Trial will only be 30 days. I'm asking for lifetime membership. So that is what I answered. There is no lifetime trial from Microsoft side. The lifetime trial that you can get if you are working for a Microsoft partner, your employer do get monthly subscriptions where it will keep on renewing every month with like $150 limit. So you'll have to check with your employer and they can help you with that, but there is no like lifetime trial or anything available. There are certain services, like very minimal services, which are free for 12 months, but even that is 12 months. But let me be very honest, you can actually within a couple of months you can get comfortable, and you can get like couple of trials definitely by using different email address and different credit card. Like, so if you cannot like get the trial again and again with same credit card, so those are some of the tricks that you can use. The other option is basically, obviously, you can invest yourself by purchasing some of these CloudLabs, or by purchasing a pay-as-you-go subscription, where obviously you need to be very cautious over there on the cost. So these labs are available. Then also, this is a let me also like put a link in the chat about some of the official lab guides from Microsoft. So the lab environment that you're going to get today, they will already have these lab guides, but these are some of the exercise that Microsoft is expecting you to sort of must complete as part of their syllabus before you appear for the exam, because they believe that this is the course. It is the core scenarios, so it is important that you go through these labs. And another thing, this is not directly related to exam, so I will I'll make it very clear. This does not directly relate to any of the exam syllabus, but this is something that I have seen super effective in learning solutions, learning to build solutions in Azure. These are like Microsoft Cloud Workshop content. So over here, it is not certification oriented. This is not to pass any certification. Okay, but this is about building some solutions. Like, for example, one of the key expectation of an Azure administrator is to build a resilient IaaS architecture. So over here, they have, like Microsoft has put together some amazing guidance where you will be building like a end-to-end solution that is used that is used by organizations like every day. Whereas the other thing that we are talking is mostly around learning, but over here, this lab guide will guide you to build a full-fledged architecture that is typically done in the production environments. So not directly related to exam, but definitely very helpful if you have time to do this. This will give you like a real world understanding of how the whole, how this whole thing works. So I'll put this link as well. And this link has like a lot of, workshops around different things like DevOps, big data, Synapse, and so on. But some great content is available over here. Then the next thing is try a practice test before you appear for exam. That way you will test your knowledge. So you can actually appear exam with confidence. And this is something like a lot of people miss. But actually Microsoft has a constant offer available through MindHub. So my MindHub Microsoft exam voucher with the retake option. So with the exam, with the, I think the fees also is like pretty much the same. I think it's $10 extra or so. So if when you purchase your exam, like buy it through this time, through this through this website, and over here, like for example, I'm currently accessing this from India, so it is telling me India price. If you're in different country, it will basically tell you give you the pricing as per your country. But main thing is like do this. Don't just directly go to the Pearson view from the Microsoft exam page and schedule it, because that way you will pay for the full amount and you will not get second attempt if you fail. So with this method, you will get two chances. If you fail, you can go and appear again with after like I think after 24 hours or so you can reschedule it, and that way you will get second attempt. However, if you pass it for the first time, then you don't get that second attempt because you have already passed the certification and you can't use that for some other exam. So this way you have like at least two options and you don't have to pay twice. So that is like another tip, and with respect to scheduling these exams. So now someone mentioned the workshop resource is a gold mine. Absolutely, the workshop resource, like from my experience, like I've mentored a lot of people in past to get into cloud, cloud career, like make their career in cloud computing. And many times I just tell them based on their previous profile, previous things, what they have been doing. I just tell them, hey, do these couple of cloud workshops end to end and make sure you understand everything. Why is something being done? And I mean, I've seen it happening, like at least like majority of them were able to clear their next interview very easily because they actually did the thing that is done in real world, not just in lab, not just in practice test. Like for example, creating virtual machine in Azure is very simple, super duper simple. Okay, so that super duper simple things are there. If whereas in interview, the interviewers are expecting you to tell you the way how the things are done in production, and these cloud workshop content actually tells you how the things are done in production. So that is why it's important. Starting directly, if you are completely new to if you're completely new to Azure, then the cloud workshop will not be a good resource, I would say. Get familiar, get with fundamentals, and then go to cloud workshops. But if you're coming with some experience already of on-prem, yeah, absolutely, you can directly start with them. Someone mentioned about ESI. Absolutely, ESI is a great initiatives from Microsoft where you can like do all the learning. They do a lot of hackathons and a lot of things you get. But so if you're working for like a Microsoft partner, that can be like a great resource available for you. So with that, let's just move on. So over here, like I'll take like 30 minutes, and I don't have like really, really, any slides anymore. So I'm just directly going to go to Azure and do some things and try to explain that. But please note, Azure is super duper vast. There will be so many options for everything. So it may get very, very overwhelming. So do not get overwhelmed. It will take time to get you to be comfortable with all the things if you are new. But you don't have to learn all the things in the first day. You don't have to understand every single option in the first day. It will take time. So even if you're creating some things today and you find out of the 50 options that were available, I only understood 10, it is fine, because as you go through the other topics, you will start understanding other things as well. So with that, let's move on. So let me go to my Azure portal and I'll just refresh once. So portal.azure.com is the place where you manage your entire Azure environment. And if you are, if you are risk taker, I can actually tell you like a quick, thing where if you want to try new things that are going to come in Azure in future, there is an Azure preview portal as well, preview.portal.azure.com, that will show you some of the new options which are not yet launched to public yet, and that way it can help you if you want to stay updated, etc. So just add preview before the portal.azure.com, and this way, like over here you will see all the new things as well. And you can see here there's a weird notification about contactability. So you will find a lot of bugs in this preview portal, but it's pretty interesting to try out actually to see what they're coming up with. So I'm here in my, let me just, in my account. So sorry, that's different tenant. Okay, so I'll just explain the concept of tenants and subscriptions quickly, because that's like a very confusing thing that a lot of people run into. So a tenant is a Azure AD tenant. It is an Azure Active Directory service. And inside the tenant, there are Azure subscriptions. So in one tenant, you can have many subscriptions, but not vice versa. One subscription can only be part of one tenant. So tenant is the top level hierarchy. So I am part of like various tenants. So I'll just like switch to a different tenant. Like all these, like I'm part of like different tenants. So I'll switch to a different one where I have some trial subscriptions available. But a tenant is the top level, entity if you were to measure. And there's a direct relationship between tenant and subscription. One tenant can have many subscriptions, whereas one subscription can only be part of one tenant. And over here, I'll just filter that I only want to see one subscription. So the first thing first, over here, everything in Azure is contained in resource groups. So resource groups are like your folders in your file system. Like you don't want to put all your files on C drive root or D drive root. I mean, never put in C drive any which way, but D drive root. So you always create like a structure, folder structure so that you can organize your files right. Think similarly. In cloud, you will be provisioning tons and tons of resources, and it can get like really messy. When you create one virtual machine in Azure, it typically creates few more things along with it, like an IP, disk, and whatnot. So when you are talking about like hundreds of machine, thousands of machine, it can get like thousands of resources. Like it is not common in an Azure subscription to have 10,000 Azure objects. So it can get pretty messy. And in order to manage it effectively, Microsoft has this concept of resource groups. So resource group gives you few capabilities. The first is obviously the resource organization. You are able to plan your resources better and maintain them better. That is the first thing. Second thing, it gives you ability to give permissions. So the permissions basically, if you have different teams, like an application team or an infra team, not everyone may need access to all resource groups. So at resource group level, you can give permissions as well to people. Like the infra team may only have access to the resource group which are containing servers. The network team may only have access to the resource groups which are containing network objects, and so on. So that is resource groups. Another like benefit, like you can have role-based access control are back on resource groups. The third thing you can do with resource group is you can use this in terms of your billing and taxonomy and so on. Like you can apply tags to resource group, like these are all a production resource group, and then you can, in your bill, you will get what are the numbers against production, like how much is my production bill and so on. So you can apply tags, you can apply policy, you can do a lot of governance things as well on resource group. Like for example, in one resource group in your company, you can allow people to create VMs more than 8 core, whereas in another resource group, you may not want to allow that. So a lot of governance things can be done on resource group, and obviously the resource organization. Every resource group needs to have a name, and Azure doesn't really like space in names. So typically in any of the resource name, like they wouldn't like really support space. So I will just call it like AZ-104 webinar CloudLabs. Then everything in Azure has to be in a region except for the services which are global. So what is region? Like Azure regions. Region are the locations where Azure is present, where they have built their data centers. So today, like the number keeps on changing. So I don't know how many regions are there, but I'm pretty sure it is more than 50 regions. Are there in Azure, and I don't know about today, but 2 years ago, when I used to do these sessions, like at that time, like it was like Azure region number of Azure regions were more than AWS and GCP combined. I don't know what is the numbers today, but there is a region is a physical location. For example, in India, there are three regions like South India, West India, and there's one more. So similarly, like in US, there are like more than 10, 15 regions. So regions are the data centers where you deploy your services in. So some things are region dependent, like you are creating a server. A server is like a virtual machine. You have to deploy that in a region. Whereas some things are global, like Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory cannot be in one region. It is a global service, because if one region goes down, Azure AD is down. So regions are the places where you deploy your things in, and some things are global where it will not even ask you to have like like where to choose. So over here, like I have like East US selected, so I'll just leave that. But there can be like different regions that you can choose. Where will this resource group exist? Then the next thing is like tags I was talking about. Like I can have like various tags, like environment type, like it is production. Then like I can have like a cost center, and I can add like some cost center number. There can be like different tags that you can use. These tags will help you in automation when you want to script things. Plus, it will help you in understanding your bill better and getting your cost data against these tags. So resource group is created. Now resource group is created in East US. This doesn't mean that I can only create things in East US. You can create things anywhere. So inside this resource group, you can create service in India, even though the resource group is in US. However, the recommended thing is it is good to keep them in the same region. Like there are like different kind of advice available here for different reasons. So what is the like? Let's take an example of what will be the impact. Now, if this resource group is in East US, what happens if East US goes down? I will not be able to make changes to this resource group. I will not be able to do anything. Inside this, if I have servers in like the resource group could be in East US, and the resources can be in West US. That can be done. So you can have like, resource group in one region, and then inside the resources, they can be of multiple regions. There is no such hard rule. So for example, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a machine. I will select this resource group, but I will select some other region. So it's possible to do so. But every Azure object, like every Azure resource, has to be in a resource group. And whenever I say every, there is exceptions. Azure AD doesn't have to be in a resource group. For example, Azure Virtual Desktop, like service itself is not part of resource group, but the session hosts are. So there are like always certain exceptions. So take every statement with a pinch of salt that there might be some exceptions there. But most of the resources that you create in Azure has to be part of resource group. You cannot create them without a resource group. So I went here. This is my basically the place where we start doing things. Create a resource. And over here, there are a lot of categories depending on what you want to create. Like you want to create like a machine learning service, you want to create like a data science machine, you want to create Power BI embedded, Databricks. So different categories. There are different services available. Like Microsoft Azure has over like 200, 300 services. So obviously you cannot go through all of the services. So when you are learning Azure, don't expect that you are going to learn all of it. No one knows all of Azure, and it is not expected as well. You still have to go through your specialized area like DevOps or infrastructure or your data science or databases and so on. So there are different roles. So depending on your role, you may know one service more than other services, but you are never expected to know all of these services. And then there is a marketplace where anyone can come and publish their service. Like for example, over here, Trend Micro is selling their product in Azure Marketplace. All these, like you can have like so many services available over here. Even at Spectra, we do like a lot of marketplace selling. Like we basically make our products as well available in Azure Marketplace, like different labs or virtual desktop resources. So marketplace is where you have Microsoft products plus partner products both. So you can use any kind of products that you need to use. However, this is not relevant from an exam perspective. So I'll go and directly we will create like a Windows Server virtual machine. So I click on create. And so over here, the first thing it is asking me, choose the subscription where you want to deploy in. And there can be like multiple subscriptions available. So I'm choosing the one I want to use. So like I said, in one tenant, there can be multiple subscription. Then it is asking me choose a resource group you want to create your service in. I can choose an existing resource group, or I can create a new resource group as well. But without resource group, you cannot proceed further. Like you have to have a resource group if you need to create a virtual machine. I will choose the existing resource group. Then a name, like any other naming convention is very important in any production environment. It is okay for testing, etc. But in production, there are like certain things that you should follow. Otherwise, things can get really messy. And this is a very important thing, not relevant for exam, but from a general learning standpoint, Azure does not allow you to rename things. So I created that resource group with this name. I cannot rename it. The only option is delete it, recreate it. And deletion is not always possible when you are already in production. So in every Azure architecture, please do make sure that you are following right naming conventions so that you can manage it effectively. And if you don't know what is a good naming convention, let me give you quick resources. So Microsoft has built this Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework where they talk about all these standard best practices. Again, not relevant for exam, but very relevant for a general learning perspective. But over here, you will find everything like how do you plan, how do you name, even naming conventions are available here. So this is like a good place you can use to learn. I'll just give like a temp name to it, like webinar VM. Region, again, By default, it is selecting the region of your resource group, but you can change this. Then the next thing is availability option. Like, how do you want this machine when it comes to availability? What is availability? In simple words, availability is nothing but a concept of ensuring that a service is available, or how frequently a service goes down. That is bad availability. If a service does not go down, and that is like good availability in simple words. But what does it mean from a Azure availability standpoint? So one of the major reason of things going down in any environment is single point of failures. So by doing high availability, you eliminate the single point of failures. That's it. That's the definition of high availability. Making sure that you do not have any single point of failure and you get the best availability of your application. So Azure gives you a lot of options of making sure that your machine is highly available, because at the end of the day, like I said before, there is no magic. It is still hardware running out there in Azure data centers. It is still the same racks, same server, same power cable. Everything is still the same. So, and those things do go down. Servers crashes regularly, power crashes regularly. 2 years ago, Microsoft had a data center failure where southwest US, South Central US region was down for almost like some 20-30 hours, and it was because of power failures. So those things are there, and they are pretty problematic, and that is why there are so many availability options. So I will take a moment and I will talk about what are the availability options in Azure. So Azure regions have there are two types of Azure regions. There are regions with availability zones. There are regions without availability zones. The region with availability zones means there are 3 data center in one region. This is an example. This is 3 different data center, 3 different physical buildings. And typically they are close to each other, but not very close as well. But so essentially in East US 2, there are 3 different data centers. So over here under East US 2, if I select availability zone, I want to use availability zone, I get 3 options, zone 1 to 3. But if I go to some other region, like for example, I don't like most of the regions now have availability zones, but I'll still try. Okay, yeah. So West US I selected availability zone. It's grayed out. So West US does not have availability zone. That means there is like Microsoft doesn't tell how many data centers are there, but there are like, there is like a single entity, like it is all considered as one unit. So 2 types of region, availability zones, without availability zones. It is recommended that you go with the region with availability zone because that gives you more availability, as there are 3 different buildings. So over here, I am going back to East US 2. And if I select availability zone, I am getting option where I want to create VM. That means out of these 3 buildings, where will my VM sit? That means if that building is down, my VM is down. My VM is down. Essentially, that simply means that my my service is down. How do you eliminate that? By creating more and more VMs in different availability zone. So if you are hosting an application and you want to make sure that it is highly available, what you should do is you should create at least minimum 2 of them. That is the bare minimum. There is no, the SLA also for Azure VMs, the 99.99 SLA, I don't remember exact number, but that SLA is only applicable if you have minimum 2 VMs of an application. If you are creating only 1 VM, that SLA is no longer there because 1 VM can go down anytime. So if you are hosting an application, you should minimum create 2 VMs if you want to make it highly available. And you should make sure that the first VM is sitting in zone 1, second VM in zone 2, and tomorrow if you create 3 VMs, create it in zone 3, So if you have like 12 VMs for one application, distribute 4 VMs in each zone. That is the best case scenario. That way you will have maximum availability. Like if one building goes down, you still have 8 VMs up and running. That is the availability zone concept. One thing I want to clear, because I do a lot of interviews, and this is like this is the basically my go-to question about how do you do availability in Azure. And you would be surprised to know that Microsoft changed these names. Until a month ago, they would not call it zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. They would only show they will only like put 1, 2, 3. The zone text was not there. And if I ask this question, what happens when I select 2 here? 80% of the people reply with, Microsoft will run my VM in 2 different data centers. It's not possible to run one VM in 2 different servers. It's basically like a like the physics law kind of thing, not literally physics law, but sort of one server can only run on one hardware. One server cannot run on 2 hardware. It's not possible. Like the technology is not at that level yet. So there's no magic. These are 3 different buildings. Make sure you create multiple VMs, one in each building, so that you have the high availability. Now, what about regions where there is no high availability? So in that case, the other option is availability set. This is like an older technology when availability zone did not exist. So with availability set, the concept is you basically have a single data center. You still need to create multiple VMs because one VM is no availability. So you still need to create multiple VMs, but at the same time, you need to you also want to make sure that both of the VMs does not run on the same hardware. Because if they run on the same physical server, both VMs, if that server crashes, both of my VM is down. So availability set helps you to make sure that if the VMs are running in the same building or same data center, they are running far enough that is tracked with fault domain. They are like sitting far enough so that they don't share the same hardware, rack, power, network supply, router, switches, like the hardware thing. So that if a hardware component fail, your VM, one VM will still be up. If you have like 2 VMs in availability set and one hardware component fail in one side of the data center, the other side is still up and running. That is fault domain. There can be like 3 fault domain. What does this mean is, if you're creating 12 VMs in one region in one availability set, that means 4 VMs will go in availability fault domain 1, 4 VM will go in fault domain 2, 4 in fault domain 3. So the chances of failure is, if one fault domain is going down, 4 VMs will be down. Then the next thing is update domain. So again, Microsoft is famous for updates, patches. So Microsoft also needs to patch their underlying hypervisors. In order to patch their underlying hypervisors, they have to reboot them as well sometimes. And when the reboot happens, VMs goes down. So update domain, there are like 20 groups. So every region is divided into 20 different groups of updates. So if you have like 40 VMs in a availability set, and then you can be sure that not more than 2 VMs will have the underlying hardware being patched at the same time. So this prevents you against unplanned failure due to physical things. This helps you against planned maintenance from Microsoft. So depending on what region is and what do you need, you should choose one of the availability set or availability zone. The latest option is scale set. A scale set is basically you define an VM, and the VM will automatically create more VMs, delete VM. The skill set will automatically create more VMs, delete VMs on demand. So that is basically is skills like virtual machine scale set. Like for example, you may have heard one of the most common use cases. If you are in festivals, like just go and increase the servers list automatically. If you are, and then once the festival is over, Azure will automatically reduce your servers. That is like auto scaling. So virtual machine scale set basically enables auto scaling for you. Auto scaling means there are more and more VMs, and that means highly availability. So the question is, why do we need scale set when we have availability zone? So like I said, these are 2 different use cases. In availability zone, if you are using availability zone, you have to decide how many VMs you want in advance, 2 VMs, 3 VMs, 4 VMs, whatever. Whereas in case of availability set, in case of scale set, you simply set rules. If the CPU utilization is more than, if the CPU utilization is more than 90% for more than 10 minutes, create 2 more VMs. That's called like load distribution. So so that is completely different use case where you want to automatically create more VMs based on the load. That is skill set. If you want fixed number of VMs, go with the availability zone. So I'll just select availability zone here. Then security type, this is a pretty new feature where they are launching the VMs with virtual TPM modules. So over here, they are like as a customer, you have more control of your VM security, and it is even more compliant as well. The standard is the standard level of security things. This is more of hardware security and so on. So secure boots, like for example, any machine supports 2 types of boot today, like BIOS based and UEFI based. So if you want to use like UEFI based, you can go with trusted launch VMs, or you can go with standard. Then there are like images. So the images basically, what OS you want to use and so on. There are so many images given by Microsoft, but you can also go and create your own image and capture that. Then spot instance. So a lot of time, we do things where it's not a production. We are just running an experiment. So we want to get it at cheapest price. So spot instance will help you there. So it will help. So what spot instance means, you are telling Microsoft, hey, I'm just running this for an experiment and I don't care if it goes down, but I need it at minimal price. So what Microsoft does is, if they have free capacity, if their servers are free in the data center, they will give you those servers at a very low rate than regular. But if they need them back anytime, they can automatically turn off your things. So it can be good for like some experimentation things where it is not production, etc. So it can give you like cheaper price, and you have like 2 options here, like what should we do, like eviction, like only evict when so basically capacity only, basically evict virtual machine when Azure needs the capacity for pay as you go workloads. So basically, like in this case, you automatically set a max price, whereas in second case, you put your price. If the price goes beyond a certain number, then do it. In this case, it's just about capacity that otherwise the price will keep on increasing automatically. And what should we do when Microsoft needs it? Should they stop it or should they delete it? You can choose. Then size. So unselect the spot instance. Then size, like what kind of CPU memory combination. Like if you're coming from a Hyper-V VMware background, you will actually have an option of doing a lot of things like 2 core, 3 GB RAM and all that. Azure doesn't give those options. So over here, you have to choose from one of the fixed combinations. There are so many series of VMs specialized, like D is the general purpose series, D series, which is suitable for any kind of VMs. B is the cheapest. Basically, it's burstable where you don't get the full CPU power. Then there are like other series like F series, which is more of like a CPU oriented, like performance things. Then there are like E series where you have like higher RAM combinations. And there are like so many other series as well, like H series, like NVIDIA series, and all of that. So depending on what you need, you can choose. Then the next thing is like simply username passwords that you want to create for your virtual machine. And do you want to allow any public port from internet? By default, it gives RDP. I'll keep it just because it's temporary purpose, but typically you should not have RDP allowed by default. I mean, if you want to do like an experiment in your trial, what you can do is create a Windows virtual machine, allow RDP from entire internet, and enable audit logging inside your Windows machine, and wait for 24 hours. Within 24 hours, you will start seeing so many login attempts to your machine from different countries. Like, so there are like, there are people, bots out there sitting, waiting for cloud IPs to be available and available on RDP port or SSH port, and they will keep on trying to log in again and again through the bots to get access to your system. And most of them, what do they do is Once they get access to their system, they use it for Bitcoin mining. So yeah, you don't want to do that. Then the last thing is basically like this is like a licensing benefit where you can save some money if you have like an on-prem license of Windows already, and basically you would save some money over here because you are using your existing license, and you need like software assurance agreement for this, and you can choose it here. So this is just the first tab. There are so many settings. Storage settings, what kind of storage you need, do you need additional disk, what kind of encryption you need, networking settings, tons of them. So there are like so many networking capabilities you can do from here. Management settings, like do you want to have security center enabled, like do you want to log in with Azure AD as well here, auto shutdown, like there are so many capabilities here. So if we go through each option of creating Azure VM itself, it will take really, really long time. So, and as you can see, the entire exam was about VM, networking, monitoring, and backup, and identity. All of those things are right here. So you cannot understand each of these options in your first attempt. Okay, it will take, so you need to make sure you're going through all the topics and then only attempt to understand every single option available here. And with that, so I'm not gonna go through each option right now, but what I will do is I will just say review and create. What Microsoft does is they automatically select some default option for each setting, which is a fine thing to do if you are doing like trial, but never in production you will have like that. In production, I would say most of the time you will need to choose one of these, and you will need to go through each option and make sure you are selecting it right. And over here, like they automatically selected something for me, like they are automatically creating a new network for me, they are automatically creating subnet. So to make it easier for people to deploy things, Microsoft is automatically doing default things, but in production these things can really make the environment very messy. So it is super important to make sure we select every single option. And over here, it is even telling me the price that will be there. So the deployment is in progress. It will take a couple of minutes for the deployment to happen. And while that deployment is happening, I'll just show another thing to you. Number one is you can do the same thing using PowerShell, using CLI, using API, or using template. And if you don't know how to do template, Microsoft makes it easy for you to do template. You can just go and create thing and get the template of that. Or even before creating, there is an option to export template, which you can save for later. So this is like another way of deploying things. And right now the deployment is happening. And over here, it has created so many things. It has created a network security group for me. That is the basic firewall where you allow block ports. It created a virtual network for me. It created a public IP address for me. It created a network interface, the NIC card, and now it is creating a virtual machine for me. So this provisioning is happening, and it will take like, I would expect 3 to 4 minutes, not more than that. Sometime it is under 2 minutes too. So from a technical session standpoint, that's basically all I could cover because it's a very small session and it's about like the certification more. But I hope like you learned a little bit of things about like how to approach things. Just couple of things I will quickly show while this deployment is happening. So you should have got an email already, or if not, you would be getting an email about your lab environment, like how do you use your lab environment, and there are some questions, like I'll take them as well in the end. But over here, like I'm logged in already with my account. You can log in with like Microsoft account, Azure AD account, Google or LinkedIn, and over here you will basically come and claim your voucher. Once you claim your voucher, you will be seeing those things right here. And let it load. So this is the learning portal. So I have like multiple vouchers claimed already, and you basically go and click on launch for the respective thing. So you will be getting like access to AZ-104. So the thing to note is, someone asked it like, is this like a trial lab free? Or it is not trial lab. It is completely free. All the labs are included, and there is like zero cost or anything. So it's not just like one lab or anything. It is basically what basically is available through our Spectra Academy as well. So Spectra Academy is a platform where we are making these labs and practice tests available. And for example, this is AZ-104. Sorry, I went to the wrong one. So this is the same thing that you would get if you purchase through here as well, like hands-on lab and practice test. The exact same thing you will get, like $99 package that you're getting for free. So there is no trial or anything. And once you click on this launch, you will basically get to like a page like this. So uh, these labs are as per Microsoft's official curriculum. So that means this is basically Microsoft's official guide. Typically, each of these exercises will take 30 to 40 minutes to complete, but we are giving 2 hours so that you can explore as well. And if it takes time, you can launch these separately over the next 5 days. Like you can launch one today, one tomorrow, one later, but it's only like for 5 days. And once you like launch, it will open the entire environment along with like guide and everything. So for example, I had launched the first environment, or which one? Yeah, I launched the governance and compliance one. So this is like an environment example, and there is like a virtual machine on the side that you can use to do your lab exercises. And if I go to like, this is the lab guide on the side, and environment details. This includes like Azure account. So let me just log in here. So this is a pre-provision account for you, and you don't have to do anything here. Like everything is already done. Azure account is already given. Like within a minute, you can actually start doing your things. And there are like other things as well available for you. The lab guide will guide you on what to do. Like for example, this lab scenario is you need to create like some management group. You need to create like support requests and all of that. That's sort of the exercise. So the guide is available right here. And like for example, we are using like custom RBAC here. So everything is available for you, and you can just complete this lab. And most importantly, you can even come and validate if you did your lab right or not. You can verify if the step was done correctly or not. That way you will know if you missed any step. For example, I haven't done anything, I just launched it, so it's telling me required management group doesn't exist, required things doesn't exist, please go and create them. This is like something additional you can get. And similarly, the last item here gives you practice test, which is like a you'll get like full 80 questions, and these are like different types of questions based on different types of scenarios that you can use. Like how do you solve problems? Like for example, over here, uh, everything is like how do you do certain things? How can you achieve the result by doing certain thing? So this is like a good practice test thing that you can use to sort of learn some of these things. And yeah, so that is all from like an experience standpoint. And the virtual machine is created, great. Now I can go and stop, start, manage, connect to the machine using like remote desktop. I can do like all of that. I'm given like a public IP, so I can go and start doing my things. So that is all from my side from a content standpoint. I know it's very high level, but I hope you learned something about how you can approach reach this particular exam. And everyone would be getting the vouchers, so please hang on, you will be getting like emails in some time, and you can claim the vouchers accordingly. If not, like we will also like put like an email address in the chat that you can reach out. And yeah, so we still have some time left, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And there were some missing questions from the site, so I'll take them up. So we have something called primitive VMs in GCP. What it is called in Azure is it Spot instance. Yeah, that's right. Basically, I think is like AWS also has it, so it's the same functionality. Does the workload in Spot VM moves to new server if Microsoft reclaims capacity? It depends on your setting. If you are okay for Microsoft to raise the price, but not okay to leave your VM, for them to turn off their VM, then it will move. If you're okay for them to turn off their VM but not increase price, then it wouldn't. So SLAs is pretty, for spot instances, there is no SLA. That is why they are giving you a cheaper price. Whereas for general virtual machines, like I had said before, if you are creating like a single machine, the SLA is very less. So it is expected that you should have at least two VMs in an availability set or two different VM in two different availability zone in order to like basically get the required SLAs. So you don't need to put your email address. We will put like an email address for support. So like let me you would automatically get it in your registered email address. So I'll put like Tarun, maybe you can put your email address. So if someone don't get it like in another hour, you can reach out to Tarun and we would like help you. But if you had registered, check with the registered email address and you will get it. Okay. Okay. I don't see like any pending questions. So you can complete the labs at your own pace and so on. From a general standpoint, like if some of you are MCTs, please feel free to go to cloudlabs.ai/MCT and you get like we give you like free labs for MCTs through MCT Pass. You want to order labs for your company, go through cloudlabs.ai and spectraacademy.com. You can get that, and yeah, that's basically all. And we do these webinars primarily to sort of spread awareness and not necessarily to like market. Yes, there has been some marketing activities but not much. So I hope you enjoyed that, and we will be doing like more and more webinars like this for Azure community. And if you are an expert on something and you want to conduct like a webinar, feel free to talk to us, and we will be happy to like organize a webinar similar to this, where you can be the speaker and we provide like additional resources and everything. So yeah. And if you enjoyed this, I would really we would really appreciate if you can like leave a review on our G2 page. So we'll put like a link, so where you can like leave like a review that would help us basically. That's the only sort of expectation, and not an expectation. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, feel free to like write a review and so forth. And I am reachable on LinkedIn, so I'll be more than happy to, if you have like a follow up thing or if you think I can be of help anywhere, feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn. I'll put my LinkedIn address as well in the chat. Yeah, so there is a question that recording. Yes, so the recordings will be there. So it will take time. So give us like time till Monday before we can send like a recording link. But yes, you will be getting like a recording link on your registered email address. So AZ-500, thanks for raising that request. We will plan to do AZ-500 as soon as we can. This is just a 1.5 hour webinar. It is just a like a high level thing.
Hey, Amit, you are around?
Yes.
I think Sanjay had some question probably he's asking, I think if we can answer like Sanjay, can you type back your question if possible? Yeah.
While going through AZ-500, only labs. Okay, yeah, labs are available for AZ-500 for sure. Yeah, we will follow up on that.
Sure. No worries, I think.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for sharing the feedback. Much appreciated.